Welcome everybody to Lightning Strikes Twice, number 12. And this is where we do two topics, 5 minutes apiece. One of us knows what the topic is and the other doesn't, and then we flip. One of us knows what the topic is and the other doesn't, but the other way around. Is that clear?
Crystal clear, yeah. Or clear as mud.
All right, so I think you're up first.
Okay, so let's see here. Mine's a kind of a philosophical-esque. Well, I guess it's maybe one of the bigger philosophical-esque things, but do we have free will?
Oh, I thought this was going to be about toast.
No.
Do we have free will? There's a great movie, came out around the time of like Saving the Whale.
I know where this is going.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you do always have a choice. Your actions are 100% your own, until we invent these little chips that you can like stick into somebody's spine and control them to like hit themselves with, right? But
yeah,
until then, we do actually have like complete autonomy.
yeah. I mean, so there's a school of thought, the deterministic school, that basically says every event and every decision made is the product of past structures and events and things, that even the things that are decisions that we make are not actually ones that we're conjuring up ourselves, but are the product of our experiences and things like that.
Well, but we made choices to have those experiences. So, like,
well,
in a
but those
domino
again
effect, it is
would have come
still.
back from previous choices and experiences and things. And I mean, I don't really buy into that whole thing. Maybe to some extent, I think that most events that happen are like very deterministic. It's just basically all the things that happen for the most part are just basically they're happening because the state of things is in a particular arrangement and it yields that result. As far as humans, though, I mean, I think I don't know. I guess I'm kind of more in the spiritual side of things, and I think we have like our consciousness is kind of special and goes deeper than just our biology, like our physical body. That
Sounds
there's
like
more
Floyd
to it.
has an opinion.
Yeah, he does. He's just woken up from a nap, so he's pissy.
He's
But
like,
I
oh,
think that
late
we
for the
do.
show.
Yeah, I mean, because it's kind of, a lot of people would think like, oh, it's just you're just following a program, right? I mean, it's just your neural programming that leads to you making the decision you made. But I mean, I guess so, because it's a complex system and you're weighing, oh, should I go this way or that way? But then there's also like kind of almost a random seed where you're like, oh, I guess I'll go that way, flip a coin or something like that in your head.
Yeah. I kind of liked how that was sort of the running theme of well, the Matrix.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like the whole idea of uh well, like simulation theory for one thing, but mostly it was more about the question of like, is the world that we know that we exist in, and however we perceive it, is
Mm-hmm.
that actually a product of our will, or is it something programmed or
Yeah.
changed on the fly by some overseers or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
or a god or whatever.
Yeah. I
um
think that's a deep question that
it
probably will
is.
never be answered, honestly. And in fact, it's a question that's been asked all the way back to like Greek philosophers and maybe earlier, who knows, cavemen are like, do we have free will? Like that kind of thing. I
Yeah.
mean, nobody really knows. And I mean, it's hard to say either way, but I do, because I mean, if you think there could be some pretty significant consequences if we don't have free will, and that basically you could say, well, that person that did that heinous thing didn't really do it of their own accord. It was just their programming. And that's kind of like a slippery slope that goes into the territory where it's like, well, no one can be held accountable for their actions at that point. Because if we don't have free will, how can they be? You know, that's just the way they were programmed.
Yeah. I mean,
And
there's free will in the negative too, right? Like the decisions you don't make or the actions you don't take,
true. Yeah.
and how impactful those things can be.
Mm.
There's even the question of like, is self-preservation always like the right thing to do, or is that like was that like your time to die and now you're like in the way?
Well,
I feel like that some days, but
some people do, or you know, sacrifice your life to for
right,
some greater cause, right?
right.
And that right there to me speaks of free will because that no, I was
Oh,
gonna say
yeah.
because that's like probably one of the biggest decisions you could ever make.
Mm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, well, we have a very angry cat here for some reason. So enjoy
This
that.
episode is brought to you by a very angry cat.
Yes.
Well, my
Okay.
topic is not about cats. It is sort of philosophical, but not really falling into any category. Um, so we just had daylight saving time, right?
Mhm.
And I just saw your minute microscopy about that, and I'm glad you didn't touch on what I wanted to touch on. So my question is, should we have a 13th month?
Ooh, I don't know. Well, you know, no, I think we should metricize everything.
I do agree with that, but
Like, I
the
mean,
idea of a 13th month isn't bad either.
mhm.
Having 28 days each month, you still have a leap day thing
Yeah.
going on, but every day, like the every month begins on one day and ends on another day. You always know, like, oh, the 19th is a Thursday or something,
Mhm.
like
Well,
that kind
and
of helps a lot with
that,
stuff.
yeah, because just doing calculations like in your head about like, oh, what day is it? You know, a week from now,
Mhm.
or what day is, you know, that kind of thing. It's very
Yeah.
difficult with the current setup.
Mhm.
And certainly that should change. I think time and calendars ought to change. I mean, if we're going to add a 13th month, which that would go a long way to improving things, but if we're going to do that, we might as well just go straight up metric and make
I
it
think a
easy.
combination of the two is actually required. Like
Yeah.
what you're saying is correct. Like if we're going to make a big change, let's get it right.
Mm-hmm.
And metric time is the only way to get away from that leap year,
Yeah.
which I've seen some kind of batty ideas about how to do that with a 13th month and stuff. So
Well,
um,
we have enough like brilliant minds out there that can all come together and try to reason this through and
yeah,
figure out a way. It's just people are resistant to change. They're like, well, this is the way it's always been, and I don't want to change. You know, like,
yeah.
well, why don't you want things to work smoothly? I mean,
I,
metric time would make things a whole hell of a lot easier, and especially if we, you know, if we just just kind of like simplified time in a way and went to like 20-hour days. So you have two halves of a day that are 10 hours apiece. So it'd be very close to 24 hours. And then made it, you know,
Mhm.
100 seconds in a minute, and you know,
Right.
whatever that you do that because honestly, we're only concerned with the hour, or really the day. Ultimately, is our main measurement, which is you know immutable. We
Yeah.
can't get around that, but we can determine how we divide it. And
Yeah.
currently we're dividing it in a stupid way that doesn't really make sense.
Robert
And
J. Sawyer, the science fiction author, came up with metric time for his trilogy on humans and hominids and all that stuff about like alternate universe with Neanderthals, and they went with metric time like day tenths and a beat
mm-hmm.
instead of a second and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Super smart. And that's the first place I had ever heard of such a concept. And he even like put the math in the back of the book, and it like totally works
Yeah.
100%. Like, but that wouldn't be quite as fun as a 13th month, just because like seeing people's heads explode about when's my birthday now, or like people who believe in astrology, that what are they gonna do? Like,
Yeah.
oh my god, a new month.
Yeah. That's true. Yeah. Well, I mean, it again, it's like the Earth revolves at the same interval, like very close. It obviously fluctuates over long time periods a little tiny bit, but basically it's the same, whatever calculation method we use, it would end at the same time every time. Same thing with the revolution of the Earth around the sun. It's like it's the same interval. So we should, like all these numbers and calendars and things like that, they're just made up. They don't have any significance. Like I'd
Yeah.
rather have something that's easy to math,
Right.
like
Yeah.
just it's so much, it simplifies things, just day-to-day stuff, like kind of head calculations, like, oh, just common things like what currently it's confusing. You pretty
Oh,
much
yeah.
have to like sit there with a calendar and figure things out, like what day of the week is it going to be 28 days from now,
Oh, and like people don't understand like what we went through to do a show last week with Germany having a complete different date for daylight saving time. And, and like, so it's like, wait, an hour back, but you're not an hour back, but you're 9 hours. Wait, 8 hours now.
Well, yeah, I sent you an email today, like, yeah, just so you know.
Yeah.
So is it
How
going to
how
be
many
this way or that?
hours of our lives are wasted trying to figure out what time it is?
I know, I know, it's stupid. Back in the day, actually, Pulsar, one of the first digital watches, they made a watch that could do all those kinds of calculations just in a little watch, like in the 70s.
Oh,
It was
oh.
built around. It was built around that. It was super cool watch. But I guess that's it.
Calculator watches.
It was, yes, one
Cool.
of the most awesome calculator watches, in fact, that still has not been surpassed.
Hmm.
The only downside is battery life, but I mean that today could easily be compensated for. But yeah, it was a very practical, like day use kind of watch. Like you could figure out what day of the week it was, 28 days in the future or however many hours and stuff. Like it could do some pretty awesome stuff. But anyway, that concludes our lightning strikes twice. Whichever number this is, it's we've had enough. We've already forgotten.
All
So,
right. See y'all next week.